I had to check the chat. It was a long stream, and people are generally not here. I'm trying to figure out a better stream date. Oh snap! I forgot to change the title. Oh well. Yo, how's it going? Can you attach the hitbox to a mesh? I'm not sure what they mean explicitly by that. If they, because you can have just a custom mesh, and you can attach it to the knife if you wanted to do that. You know, a lot of 3D games do that. You know, they just have their hit spheres or hitboxes just attached to a game object. That way, when you're swinging your sword, I tend to, have a fighting game mentality, I suppose, where my attacks are sort of defined by these sort of explicit like hit areas. It's not really that important in a character action game, so it's just the way I work. So if you want to just throw it on a mesh, you could do that. Because you could even do that. You could still, because this is its own object, you could attach it to the knife, and that update would still happen. You know, it updates itself, it still looks at the script, so you could have some scaling that happens, but that knife's going to be moving around, so you just have to accommodate for that. So you can have both. It would be as simple, the implementation would be as easy as this. So if you wanted to, go ahead. For my own purposes, I'm going to go ahead and keep it on there. Someone also mentioned use on trigger enter instead of on trigger stay, and they may be right. I had it in my head that like I wanted like some sort of detection happening. The problem is this: they're right for the most part, but let's swing, and let's go ahead and stand right here. We're on trigger enter at this point, or on trigger enter has already happened, excuse me. So if I swing again, it wouldn't detect it because we're already on there. And so that is a good idea. And you could do a different implementation where it's like not enabled, and that works. But in this case, in my experience, I use on trigger state because of how I implement it. So what were we getting to today? Well, we're going to do a simple hit effect. And again, you can check out some nicer, make sure we're streaming. Okay. I don't know. I have a lot of these sorts of videos on the channel already. So we're going to do, this is going to be mostly about the implementation into our event system. So let's go ahead. And just create a game object, 3D object, quad. We'll use the built-in quad. Slide it over here. We're going to go to our materials. Create a new one. Did I bring over those shaders yet? Doesn't look like I did. We'll call it Spark Material 1. What I would like to do, create us a new shaders. Wow. Folder. And go ahead and where is it? Is it this one? Oops, it's in there already. Assets, my assets. Oh, no, gosh, sorry. Shaders. Gradient map multiply. Go ahead and copy that. I think I can just drag it in, right? It'll duplicate if I drag, right? Won't get rid of it. Okay, good. So this is a shader we use all the time on the channel. Go ahead and reload all of them. And for now, we'll just call it tutorial gradient map multiply. And did I redo it so it's only one pass? I wanted to change this one. I guess that's the reason I do it. It'd be nice. Ugh. It's so weird. Can I do it? Hold on. Let's see. I'll just leave it because it's working. So it's a separate issue. It's not really that important. I was hoping to start off on the right foot, I suppose. Like, yeah. This is fine. Oh, it still calls it a little deep. Can I save it? Really? Still called that, even though am I in the right one? Change the tutorial. I don't know why it's doing that. Yeah, save it. Oh, I was hitting Control S, and there was a little timer going off, but it was not saving. So, create map multiply, and let's go ahead and create another new folder. This isn't that important, but VFX. I'm actually going to grab that material, put it in our VFX, and go ahead and open up this program. Do file new, 12, 12, and start with the background, Control Shift new, and we'll make it pretty basic and then maybe fancy it up a little bit, but we're not going to spend too much time on it. Grab rectangle tool. I think better would be polygon tool and set it to 4. That way we can have it on angles. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like it aligned pretty perfectly. And we're going to make fill 0. Go to blending options, gradient overlay. Gonna do diamond. I'm gonna reverse the black and the white here. And as we go to black, we're gonna go ahead and go down in opacity. Okay, go to background. Save that. Various documents. Tutorial. What did I call it? We'll call it /bit_spark text and save it. Here, it's going to be in there. Alpha is transparency and no compression. And in here. So this shader, if you're not familiar, it's pre-multiplied blending. Go ahead and throw it into the scene here. So we're going to drag the material onto the object in here. This is some of the annoying of this shader. Some of the annoying. Where did it go? Weird, I thought it was in a way different spot. When I click on it, it only works from like one direction. It's just kind of annoying. I don't know why it does that. It's because of how it culls its faces, and that's what I was trying to correct when I was sort of messing around there for a sec. Go hit spark, get rid of the mesh collider, we don't need that. What this shader does is it's pre-multiplied, and so it means if we get rid of the alpha, it blends, based on the alpha, it blends between additive and alpha blending. And it looks at the black and white of the texture and the alpha, but it takes two colors and blends those based on the black and the white in the texture. If we have like an orange highlight and then like a red, darker red down here, we have this sort of look. Right here. And the nice thing with that is that even though we want like an additive blend, kind of make it a little bit opaque, it'll stand out a little bit nicer on, you know, other like lighter backgrounds. You can even go do some stuff like this. And there's also an intensity, which helps a lot with that sort of thing. And we did this diamond shape because we're going to do sort of a standard, and we could do rounded. We'll mess a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go create empty, and then make that the parent, please. Please. There's all these. Yeah, it's all fudge still. Trying to get it just so it's in the scene. There we go. So call it flash hit spark VFX, and then we'll call this the mesh. And if you see my videos before, it's just so we can have a bit of an offset to mess with if we need to. Go ahead and zero this out. Around. VFX. We could have a separate prefabs folder in here if we're trying to be real studious about it, and we'll drag that into there. So now we have a new prefab. And next thing we want to do is go to animation, and I generally have these all, it's funny, by default they're all over here. And then, anyway, I like to have my animation over here. And to make it easy, just go ahead and click on the create from here. VFX, and we'll call this /hit spark any1. And it's going to be a real simple effect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe. We start out really wide like this, maybe kind of like that, and then in the course of about 8 frames, skinny and long like this. So pretty standard effect you've probably seen before. Go ahead and make it smaller there, and then we'll change the timing. Like this so it grows a bit more. Ready. Want it a little thicker here and longer. Thick and long, me and my Ginormo. You ever played Ginormo Sword? It's a pretty cool Flash game from a long time ago. It's this like top-down action RPG where you increase the length and width of your sword as you level up. You get to choose, and the width is like the damage too. It's a fun game. You know, the innuendo is obvious, but pretty fun. We'll go ahead and go a few more frames here. Looks pretty good. We're losing a little bit of snappiness by doing that. Too snappy. Oh gosh. That's it. Doesn't always update right away. Check that again. Please. Ooh, making me mad. And we'll just separate this out. Another thing I wanted to do was fade out the intensity. Could even do some color. We're here, I suppose we could just do it. We'll blend a little bit into red here. And then on the last frame, super red. And then on this one, a little bit darker, a little more opaque, and then fully opaque. But then also intensity, come down a little bit. We start out pretty intense. And then here, fade all the way out. That's a little weird, doesn't seem to be. So we just don't see that red fade out too much. That was a little bit better. Then I guess from here we can even go bluish. That's a little too much. I still don't quite like pace of it. We'll adjust it a bit. Go ahead and let it run and then just watch it in scene view or the game view. I mean, it's okay. Probably start a lot fatter. Yeah. As we go through here, go ahead and check those curves. We will sharply, fast in, slow out. General good rule for animation effects. I'm actually gonna get a little crazy. Increase the opacity. Get darker here. And then go totally black here. Even though we're fading out with the intensity too, it can be kind of nice to just let it get dark. Looks okay. We could do a lot better. If we really wanted, we could try. Maybe too much of a snap there. Actually thinking that. Looks a little bit better. Go ahead and just do that for now. So we're gonna need a new variable for our data. What we're gonna want is just a way to hold on to a bunch of different types of prefabs. We could have separate lists, like maybe visual effects and things like that, but it can be kind of nice to just have everything. Like if you want to instantiate a visual effect, or if you want to instantiate a character or a scene object, just have them all in there. So just like the commands and the character scripts, things like that, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new one. So double click, will that open it up? Double click here, will. Cool. I want to do our data's open twice because I don't know why. I mean, I kind of know why. Because mono-develop's weird. Or, it's not mono-develop, this is Visual Studio, but save files here. Go ahead and get public list of game objects, simply. And we'll call them global prefabs. That's just what I always call them. Sorry, just think a little bit, because we're going to want a yeah, right here. This is what I was thinking of. Get prefab names. Yeah, it's all going to be based on global prefabs.count. And we'll just use the built-in name, as it's called. The default inherited object name. And we won't quite get into that yet. But we will when we get into our script, actually. So click on our core data. Our global prefabs here. Go Go ahead and add one. And we'll just drag our hit spark there. Now, you could probably just have it in game engine. Void. And we'll start it with a simple one. We'll probably have a bunch of different implementations where you pass more variables, but we'll just do a simple one for now. Core data. So we can just do, well, already we're going to want some variables. So at least that we can have one without it. Well, can't imagine way to instantiate where you don't have a position. So you can always want that pretty much. So we do GameObject.instantiate and whoops, core data dot global prefabs, and which one? Well, this index. And then you can just parent it right away. Go ahead and just pass that for now. And then there's ways like whether you scale it based on the character or not. We'll just see where this gets us first. So it says that's redundant. Let's see. So instantiate game object, and you can look up in Unity like how instantiate works. So now in our character, go ahead and make a script. Do event script case 5, and we'll do prefab. And we're actually going to do like a local implementation, because instantiating like this global one in the game engine is going to be our most robust one over time as we develop the game. But we're going to want some simple ones in here. So we do event script. Here's where it might get a little tricky. We're going to want to have some special case stuff. For now, we can just do the variable. And we can do game engine global prefab, cast it as an int index, and we can pass ourself as a game object. Then we gotta make sure we make that an actual script. We don't necessarily have to in this case, but we're gonna want to make it so we can have like dust and sparks and stuff for our actions. All right, clicking on that. Character scripts. A new one. Prefab. Again, we won't necessarily call it from here, but we'll call it from our script here when we get hit. And so we actually want to call it on the target, so we'll just do it on ourself here. So global prefab, and we will just pass 0 because it's the first one on there. So here's where in script it can get a little dicey. In like a beautiful, beautiful world, some of this, or even a lot of this, like you're getting hit code would be all data in like an event system. And so you would be able to just like we can look at these other scripts that are, indexed, we could do that, and we'll be able to do that, but we could do that like in here. It's just a long roundabout way of saying that, you know, we're gonna have to use some magic numbers. So again, global prefab 0 is our /hitspark VFX, and we have that implemented, and it's gonna hit, and then it's just gonna loop. So let's fix that part at least. Mesh, our animator. And we can make a sort of, still like two minds about how to do this. I sort of have a default convention for all my visual effects. I just call it VFX. But each controller has its own thing because it's going to have a different animation in here. I don't really know what like the best way of doing it is. But in this case, we'll just do this. Now, I'm not sure why it's looping. Go ahead and not loop it for the time being. They're not going to destroy. We'll set that up in a sec, but just to make sure we get it all working okay. We'll destroy it. It's going to be vertical, which isn't quite right. And it doesn't even seem to be animating, so what happened? Usually it does it by default. I'm not sure why that's happening. Nothing weird in here. Let's check out our object here. Always animate, all right. Why though? Sunfire's off, right? Is parenting okay? Kind of a weird offset though. Let's see. Why aren't you animating, friend? Well, there's no animator on it. I guess I didn't update this. We'll hit apply to update our thing there. That was a little weird. Strike. And the hit effect happens over there. There's going to be some better ways of doing... Well, let me think here. One thing we can do. Well, first, let's try and correct this positional problem. Like, really far to the side. Is it because the original position is... We're going to have a more robust instantiation script, but for now, we'll just do that and see if it helps. So, looks like it did. You can see that's a little whack. Let's go ahead and make this more robust. What I was getting at, though, is that we can do on our camera. Wow. We can duplicate this. Call it Hitbox. On here. Where's our where are they? So this is for like, doesn't mean all your Hitbox or visual effects have to be on here, but this is like for the special Hitbox camera. So on the second one, we don't clear. Move all this. And we just have the Hitbox. And then here, we don't have the hit sparks. And then, on this bad bee, we make it the hit sparks layer. Seems to be hidden for some reason. Maybe I implemented this wrong. So let's go back. Oh, I didn't give this a layer yet. Okay. There we go. So we have to set the camera's layer to that too. So now this will draw on top of everything. It's not great. Oh, it doesn't look like it's doing it. It will in game mode though. No? You memeing me, son? What's wrong? Okay. I knew I did something wrong here. Shouldn't this draw on top? Let's see. We'll try and get this to work. Should be drawing. Only though I want. I thought it was nothing though, and then. I mean, I thought I had it. Did I not hit apply? Sorry, y'all. Shift F to make it face. Yeah, it's not drawing on top. Why is that? This should work. What am I missing? I don't think I need to mess with the tags. What are you doing to me here? Oh Lord. Part not matter. Camera preview. I should draw right on top. Oh, I need the depth. Forgive me. Go back to hit sparks. With the depth less, right? More? I swear. What has happened? Not drawing on top still. Oh my gosh, y'all. Every time. Ooh, that's making me mad. Because it's drawn it here. We shouldn't clear, right? Hitbox, draw it again. It's gonna make it do this. Okay. So it was a combination of some stuff that I forgot. I think it was I needed depth, and then I needed to have the depth layer here. So if we go below, it goes away. Then we go on top. Actually go 0. Now, hopefully, it'll just draw on top of everything. Not quite great, but I use it for a lot of effects myself. Again, this hit spark is when we instantiate it, it's looking at its position here, so we actually don't want that. We're going to make this more robust, like I mentioned. So position is going to equal vj.position. And we'll do quaternion.identity. And then we will do obj. Transform.root. So that's just like a default rotation. And again, I generally like to have like some offsets, like we have like some rotations down in here rather than on this, in case we do need to do it based on the rotation, but then like the offset is sort of there for us. We also want one last thing. I'm gonna have to cheat again like I always do. Load up my game. And we're gonna want a Billboard script. That way it just faces the camera. Always. Go to scripts, over here, grab that. This one's called Billboard Flat because I already had a Billboard script, but this Billboard Flat one was better, and I couldn't think of a better name at the moment. It's weird that I didn't save that. So, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, right. So I have a reverse thing because some scripts or some objects may, like if you're looking at the camera, but maybe the back like doesn't get drawn, and so you have a reverse script, so it'll flip it if we need to. So all it does is just transform.look at my position and the camera.main position. And then takes like the rotation of the camera, and based on up. So instead of like global up, it's the rotation of the camera up. So it's look at the camera, and then the up direction is like the rotation of the camera. That means if the camera's tilted forward a little bit, 45 degrees, then up is like me leaning back 45 degrees, if I was looking at the camera. I have a little bit of a rotation offset, so I can just have a little bit of randomness. I still don't know some good ways to do randomness, like when you have an animated object. But I'll get to the actual implementation here so you know what I mean. Go ahead and put it on this actual one here, on the mesh. Board flat. And let's see, is it the Z rotation that's... We'll do negative 360 to 360. I know that's overkill in a sense, but we'll get some randomness as we strike. So now we get random directions, and that looks pretty cool. We can see it's pretty small. I was hoping to get into like a more advanced implementation. In this case, we won't need to. Go ahead and just double up our original one. Boop, boop, boop. Hit apply, and it'll be a lot bigger now. Might be too big, but call me a liar. Why didn't that go? Oh, I'm scaling the mesh. Ugh, fudge. So what I want to do, luckily, I can go up. Have a little offset here. Oops, did that backwards. Continue. Go ahead and hit apply. And make this back to 1. I am scaling the mesh in the animation, so that's why nothing was happening. Now we can have a bit of an offset. And that's why I like those offsets. It's like that, and then a little too huge, but it's looking pretty cool. Could be snappier, could fade out better. But it does not look that bad. And when it's bigger, we may not need it on the hit spark layer anymore. I didn't apply it apparently. So it looks a little whack, and what we'll want to do in that case is put it in between the two of them. It can get hard because when you have it on the hit spark layer, it gets a little too I'm the boss. That can be nice, like, you know, how it's on top of everything like that. But you may want to, again, I didn't apply it. Just put it in a position or give it a size and animation where it just looks good no matter where it's happening. But I think even instead of all deep with this particular effect, my sparks are sort of in real space instead of like this overlay hit spark layer. Looking pretty cool. So that's that. I don't want to get into, well, basically what we'll do, and I'll probably do this next time. But basically when we do this from a script, like from an event, and I've mentioned this before in another video, we'll make our prefab instantiation script more robust, and we can pass a transform or, you know, location, rotation, and scale. So by default, we'll scale it to the character. So if we have different size slimes, like we do in this case, you know, this big dude over here, for certain effects like dust, you know, if dust swirls around their base, we want that to scale with them. But if it's a generic, not only do we want it to scale with them, but for certain attacks, you know, it may need to be a different size. And so we can pass that. And then just for variety's sake, you know, maybe if this certain move has more vertical movement, then maybe we'll scale the Y a little bit. So that way, like the peaks of the dust, like kind of fly up higher and give us a better look. Just a quick one there. Hopefully that covers it. What we want to do actually is in here, we want to make a new behavior script. We'll call it VFX control. And let's see. There's a way. One of the reasons I have this, it's you want to change the parenting. By default, we parent and it stays parented to the character. And actually, to make it look a little bit better, we might want to undo that for our hit spark. So we just want that spark to exist where it exists. We don't necessarily want it to follow the character. But with these state machine behaviors, we want to have some variables that, you know, determine where we could deparent on a certain frame, when we get destroyed, to actually destroy ourselves from this script. That's the main thing. And I'm trying to think about how I implement it, and I just closed the other one, and again, I need it again. I always do that. This will be a good way to close it out, actually. Sorry, I keep doing this. Wait a bit. Actually, call it just VFX to parent from the beginning. Let's see, when do I call it? So on state update. Oh, so I just have I have some ways for implementing, you know, the hit pause if we need it for our visual effects too. Generally, it's nice that during hit pause, the visual effects still animate. It gives you this nice like crunchiness, so it's like everything's stopping, but like explosions are still happening, and so the action's still happening. So it's not this like real strict like stops. It's, you know, like the characters are kind of stopping for drama, but the rest of the world still goes on a little bit. So we have this on state update here. I'll go ahead and just copy this. I'll try not to. So on state update, go ahead and you know, by default, when we made a new one, it just made this. Whoops. What happens is that like this gets called every frame. For convenience, which is great, maybe necessity, it passes the animator that it's attached to, and the state info and the layer. So, you know, on here we have the space layer that gets passed. This actually Citadel Deep still. You know, it passes the animator itself. So that's going to give us a lot of information that we want. I really want to close Citadel D, but I feel like I need to open it again. And actually I didn't need it. This was all in here already. So just to cheat a little bit. State info.normalize time. State info, that's just a variable that just gets passed. .normalize time. And so what that is that's the state of the animation. So before, you know, when I was playing, you see that blue bar go across. That's the time it's in. I do normalize time, so it's 0 to 1. So 1 is the end. And so what we can have to begin with is a deparent frame. Deparent equals 1. That way it won't deparent by default. That's just going to depend, and you can change that if you need. And then I'll see how I implement it over here real quick. So if it's greater than or equal to 1, just like I thought, destroy self. And then deparent. What was the implementation for that? Not in here? Oh, there we go. We just remove the parent. What you do is you set parent null. It's going to depend on how you're parenting things. So you should have a consistent way of doing it. That way you can deparent in a consistent way. Because what it does, at least in this implementation, it looks at myself, and it actually sets the root when it gets created, which we'll set up here. So that way it has a root, because sometimes your animators are going to be on different layers, on different spots in the hierarchy. It may be on the root object. It might be a few children down. And so you need a consistent way to look through those and make sure you get in the right spot. So we will. And we might not actually use this quite yet. Void destroy self. And generally, creating and destroying objects a lot is not a good idea. But I do it. Ideally, you would have a pool of objects. And with our data here, they're global prefabs. What we would do is we would make a special like a pool list. And I might get into that in a future episode. So instead of just having straight game objects in a list, we would have a list of a more specialized class. And that class would have, you know, the parent game object, or, you know, the prefab, basically. And then it would have its own list. And that would, you would instantiate how many you want. And you'd have those pooled and ready to go. That way you could just enable and disable those. And you could get a little fancy with it. And based on your gameplay during editor time, if you needed more and more, you know, you just expand the pool. You'd have that anyway. Unless it was like a visual effect that was like really performant, or not performant, but performance heavy. And then you would save that in your core data. So it'd be an exception where you would actually update this all the time, just that particular variable. That way you just have a general good sense of like how many of certain effects you need. And so that would just be sort of a heuristic sort of machine learning almost. A really rudimentary one. That would determine the size of the pools, because going to be caching all this. You're going to be instantiating all this right from the get-go and then just disabling it all. And then you just enable them and reset them all. Just kind of what you want to do generally in game design, but Unity's weird. Even though Unity really wants it, and this is like a really common complaint, that's like, why isn't there more pooling options by default? Or, I mean, they have great tutorials on it, but it just, I don't know. It's a complaint I also have. And I hate to complain, Unity's pretty awesome. Criticism, let's say that. But we're going to be dirty with it, we're just going to destroy. I actually haven't run into too many problems with it. That's why I keep doing it. So destroy self. Forget how I implemented this. So this one you got to be really careful because you want to destroy yourself, but you don't want to destroy your parent. So if it's not equal to null, we're going to destroy the root, our VFX root. So we're actually going to just copy this and we'll go over it. Because if we just destroyed our root by default, when our effect ends, then we're just destroying whoever we're attached to, which we don't want. So on state enter, we just set that animator to my animator. Go ahead and copy that one too. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. My animator, public transform VFX root. You can even just call that parent or something. Again, it's going to change. And there might be times where you instantiate on parented scene objects, and so you want to make sure you hold on to that. That your root is yourself. You could set that, I guess, per prefab, but we want it dynamic, so we don't have to worry about that. Looks like this is actually all fine. So if the info from this time is greater than or equal to parent, the parent. Yeah, we can go ahead and copy that. Greater than or equal to 1, which I believe is the case. Double check. Yep. And we destroy ourselves. So that way, just when it gets, wow. Had that grossly misspelled. Distraughty. So when we get to the end, we just destroy ourselves. So that way we're just, by default, we're just one-shots. Actually not going to do the deparent yet. We'll do that another time. So if we like, in the prefab, we could set this the root, and we could do it dynamically as well. It gets a little complicated because you need to do it. It gets instantiated and parented before it even starts the state info, right? And that's understandable. The game object gets sent into the world, and then and then it updates and the animations start processing. So setting this dynamically in this script isn't always a good idea because our parent isn't necessarily going to be set yet. So by default, we'll just have this where if it's not equal to null, we'll destroy our VFX root. And instead, and this one, this is like a really old implementation. What I do is I take the animator and then destroy that object, but already that's not great because you can see here, our animator object's way down here, so we're going to have all these empty game objects. So we're probably going to want to go ahead and implement that right away when we instantiate. And we're going to need to do that anyway. So one of the steps we need to do still is in our more robust one in the game engine, Is that create a game object? So luckily it's game object. It returns a game object, which is really common. That's a common game design thing. So game object next prefab equals that. So now we have the next prefab, which we can mess with. So we want to, this part gets a little dicey. I don't know if it's the best way, but why did it go there? You're joking me right now. Oh, I'm not in the camera. Please, why is it doing that? What? Let's see. What are they called again? They called state behaviors. So here's my robust one in the previous game, or in the other game I'm working on. I go through each animator that might be in, and this is a little slow. Tends to not be too bad. And then I also get a list of all the behaviors that are in there. And generally, there's just the one. It's that same thing where, you know, when we're looking for our core data, in this case, we don't have to specify because there's only going to be one behavior if we implement it that way, you know, and that's how we're going to implement it for now. And it actually only looks for the ones, the types that you look, you know, that you've defined here. And what we do is set all this stuff. And I have some other, you know, special cases where I want it by default to be like the base of the character. There's also this special thing right here, which we will get to. This one is very near and dear to my heart because it was a bug that I could not solve for about 4 or 5 years. It really bothered me. And it's a little bit interesting. So anyway, go ahead and copy this over. So when we instantiate a new prefab, in this case, it's like only doing VFXs, but we'll make it work in a more generic sense. And we'll put a little, it's parented out, but if VFX, then we do this, and then we'll make a check for that. So for each animator in our prefab, so we look in the children. So this actually exists. Well, this one isn't in the. Oh yeah, because it's the prefab. So this is the top. And what did we call our script? VFX control. So this returns a list. We don't necessarily need it to be a list, but in this case, we're just gonna. Sorry, I was reading that error. So ours is called VFX control. So what we do, you know, my animator.get behaviors. So, you know, behaviors I haven't mentioned are special like mono behaviors, but they only exist on states here. And this is a way how you could actually tie everything to just the Mecanum state machine. And it's something I'd like to figure out still. I find it difficult when I've just run into difficulties, to put it simply. So instead of having it all in our core data, I mean, I'd still want that, but then on each of these states, you know, especially in our our character ones, our character mechanism stuff, we would have those states that we defined just tied to here, and it would help a bit. It would help a lot in some cases. But it also gets a little clumsy, unfortunately. It's hard. So anyway, we look for VFX control. That's what ours is called. And again, get behaviors, plural, returns a list. So then we go through that list. I just called it behaves. It's just a silly name. We'll go ahead and keep it. So let's see. We have our behavior, and we have that VFX root variable that we set. And we set that to this transform prefab. That way, it's dynamic, but it gets called at the right time. So it's not being called in the behavior state, after some time may have passed and it's been parented to something new. We set it to this specific parent. Again, you could set it in the prefab, but this makes it dynamic. So that's nice. Not sure what this is for. Not sure why I had it set up like that. Also probably some implementations that hold that for now. But really, all we're setting is that root. So here's the big thing that I mentioned. So I had this error that if I instantiated it, it would take a few frames to animate. So this hit spark would be out here. Stuck on frame 1 like this for about 3-4 frames. When I ran it in an actual build, not in the editor, it wouldn't always happen, but it sometimes would. I tried so much stuff. Basically what I had to do was all my animations had to start invisible. It would wait a few frames and then it would pop in. That would mean I'd have to run my animations early. Some of them I just let it slide because I couldn't run it early. Like with hit, impact stuff like this, and just dealt with it. I just, embraced that it held this pose for a few frames. And it looked fine for some, but I hated it. Just, I don't know. I sort of lost track of my complaints here, but basically I had to run it early. I had to deal with stuff that wasn't intentional. It sucked. Stunk, excuse me. And I tried so many different things. I tried that pooling thing. I'd heard that that's the reason. You just need to enable them all, instantiate a bunch of them, and then just enable them when I needed them. So I did that, redid a whole bunch of stuff, and it still did it. So I tried this. I tried calling the update right away. Well, I want it to be on frame 0. I don't want it to have any time passed. So my animator.update past 0, even past a float. Still did it. And so, this seriously lasted 4 or 5 years, or 4 years, I suppose. I haven't been that long yet. And, I'm running into it again. It's really pissing me off. I see this little thread. You passed time.delta time. So what's happening is that the animator wasn't being called yet, so it kind of takes its time getting going. And if you pass a 0, it still thinks the same thing. So what you have to do is pass time.delta time, at least with this implementation. I honestly don't know of any other implementations that'll do that, in the way that we need, where you can just throw out prefabs. But can actually see if it's actually doing that with our game. And this, see if we have any errors. Throw this. Swing. Bop, bop, bop. Go ahead and put it on. What's on Hitbox? What's the deal? Now what's happening? Not apply it again. Let's see. Oh, was it showing up in the scene for some reason? It's way down here. That was weird. All right. Round 3. Back to game mode. Bop, bop. See, it animates right away with no issue. Not sure why. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that in there. Maybe it was just there's too much stuff going on in my game at the moment. I don't know why it was doing that. It's really fudging annoying. Oh, we actually want our deparent to start working. We can implement that. Control. How did I do this? We need to set our parent to null. So yeah, if it's kind of complicated, we'll go through it. So if VFX root not equal to null, so make sure we actually have VFX root set. If their parent doesn't equal null, like it's already been deparented, or there's other reasons I had it in there, I can't remember. And VFX root.parent isn't equal to the root, so it's like not that it's not itself, but like it hasn't already been deparented, or it's not like it's hard to explain. A simple way is that it already hasn't been deparented. A way to check that. And then we set our parent to null, and that's just a way to deparent. Go ahead. Animator. And with our attack, go ahead and make that knockback really far. Illustrative purposes. Swing, get hit, get knocked back, see the visual effect follows along. Doesn't look awful, but let's go ahead and try something different. Actually, deparent on frame 0. You can see a little bug there that if they have a lot of knockback and they come out of hit stun, then when they're in their neutral state, they kind of face their velocity. That's why he turned around there. There's a lot of ways to fix it that we'll get to later. Go ahead and hit. And you can see the effect now stays there because we deparent right away. And that's a little more desirable for this sort of effect. It's pretty cool. But maybe, that's kind of close. We're holding on to there. This can get a little tricky. Certain effects, it'll look okay. It's only lasts a few frames. So does it last like 12 frames? So if we do 0.5, should last about 6 frames. My math can be a little bit wrong. And not that the math is wrong, but like the sort of time scaling of the animation, little ticks on the animator window here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then Actually saw it deparent down here already, so it looks like my math is right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, it might not last a total of 12 frames. So it can look a little weird, but really it didn't look that bad. We do see it moving, but it's kind of staying in place. And if we wanted this like even more robust, we could ease out of that. We could set a little velocity, sort of slide away. It's up to you. Go ahead and try and hold it for just a few frames. If that looks any better, you may prefer that. That way, it's a little bit closer to the character. You know, the character gets knocked away, and it's sort of at the character a little bit more. Because when we have it at 0, it's kind of far away. You know what I mean? It's like way over here. But if we set it to hold for a couple frames here, you know, it follows the character a little bit and then deparents and finishes out its, you know, what it's supposed to do. Go ahead and rid that knock back again. Cut into them a whole bunch. Surprisingly little variation. And then if we maybe look at it, different implementations, maybe we do like that better. Or maybe we want to try and keep it later. We like that better. It's really subtle, and certain angles are going to be more noticeable. I also want to just almost seems like we're not getting that first frame. I think we are, but I can get a little nuts with it. Make that effect pop a little bit more. That looks better. Actually make it shrink a little bit faster too. That initial impact looks nicer. Yeah, so my cover for today. So you need to, you know, whenever you make a new visual effect, you need to, God's phone, dudes. You know, add this behavior. And then, you know, we did new script, but now that we've made it, it'll show up there. My animator, I might not even need that for this implementation because we made it from the beginning. That was like an old implementation I had. But right away from our global method for instantiating. And again, we have a little check here if it's a VFX. Kind of by default, it does it anyway. That'll look through all the animators and look for any VFX control and set that stuff. There might be a way to set this up better, but it's nice to have it. And there's going to be more complicated things that we'll want to do. So it's nice to have this anyway. Yeah, I think that about does it. There might be questions. I'm sorry. I guess I could. The chat. I was gonna say I could reload the chat, but then it's like it's not gonna show them anyway. I think that covers it. We'll make it cool. Oops, started the wrong game. Like those memes where, you know, step 1, draw a circle. Step 2, draw more forms to sort of, you know, circular forms to create the general shape. And the step 3, like finish drawing. Anyway, thinking a little bit. Got a lot done. Looking pretty cool. There's a case where it follows too long. It looks a little weird. I don't know why it wasn't launching some of those. It was weird. That might be a case where you do want it to not. That's a good thing to note. look a little bit better. You might want to hold it for a few frames. If you really, really wanted to, you could make it based on the attack itself. You probably don't need that, but... And then we'll do things, it just goes to the character's position. So it's a little low. In general, it's going to be low just based on how I implement my animations, like on the mesh part of it. A little fun, little slime hat. And so want to make that maybe dynamic. Like if we're up a little bit higher, then the effect is higher. In your own games, you might want a strikes. What I do in my games is that whenever you do get hit, I make a strike spot. And it's just a variable that's on the victim. And you can do it easily where it's just sort of the distance between the two. You could do, the position between the two positions with a little bit of an offset. And so if you're up higher, it'll hit higher. So this is still hitting a little bit low. You may want it more dynamic than that. And really, you can make it super dynamic, just like with the hitboxes, where you determine it based on the collider or just the position of your knife object, or you would have like a little, just a child on your weapons, just to sort of hold a position that's more akin to where the blade might be. Because your actual knife transform is more likely to be like on the hand. And so yeah, you can make that dynamic is what I'm getting at. But yeah, that should do it. Thank y'all so much again. And I'll have to do the whole spiel again. This is a separate video. If you want to support these videos, check out patreon.com/Culture Attack. One of our main missions here is to have free information. So the idea is that if you have the means, then just give $1 per month. It helps a lot. Just $1. And this one sounded a little more capitalist-y, which I hate. But just that one little amount per month, it just really helps a ton. It's crazy. But only do it if you need it, if you find value in these videos and you can afford it. Need was the wrong word. If you feel it's worthwhile. Even if you don't, even if you end up making billions of dollars using these videos, it's fine. Our mission is the belief of free information. I hope you'll support and buy my games once they're out, but the information, the techniques, the hope is to build a community, and just so this information is a lot more public and well known, so we can build off of it. One of my most proudest moments recently was, I'm forgetting their name, I'm so sorry. Someone on Twitter had a huge number of retweets. They had a nice tweet, and they, quoted me as using my videos, and it was really nice. And they've been just a really supportive person anyway, so that's really cool. But it was just cool. Like, the effects they made were really badass, and it's stuff that's been done before, but really I think a lot of this information isn't public. A lot of people learn it. Even in the West, a lot of the implementations are a little more perfected in Japanese games. And for a number of reasons. One, because they love action games and they love more of the over-the-top effects. And because some of these simpler implementations work really well for mobile games. And that's another one of our sort of, hope in the future we get some more. Hope isn't the right word. But I really like effects that, gosh, this phone, dudes, that are easy to implement. Anyway, check me out on Twitter too if you like a Culture Attack. And you can send me an email to, as always, this will be made available to download through the YouTube video. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. These go live on YouTube. I record these live. These go live on YouTube. These go up on YouTube. I record these live, but just because I don't have a better way to record video. And so the idea is to just have them up on YouTube. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm not sure what we'll do next. Might be a little bit simpler. You know, we're going to flesh out a lot of stuff, basically, is what would be next. I wanted to have her textured by today, but I didn't get quite to it. I added some stuff. I redid her mesh a little bit too. Anyway, thank y'all so much. Y'all are great. Love you so much. Take care.